Hi everyone, Larkin Greene with FPD. Today we're going to talk about a variation in a custom shoe technique that enhances the ability to use a pour-in with a custom-made shoe. So this is an example of a custom-made SuperFast shoe done in 2 layers. And so what we're trying to do is approximate the dimensions of a shoe that this foot would normally wear. And oftentimes when we do this, it's a therapeutic situation and we want to put a pour-in as well. The problem with that is the pour-in does not flow under this because it's bonded to the foot. So if we look at a shoe on a nailed-on shoe, we can see that there's sole relief, which allows the pour-in material to flow underneath. And even though it bonds well to the sole and the frog, it's locked in by the ability to flow underneath that shoe. So with this application, we don't have that ability. And so even though the material will bond to this urethane shoe, it can't flow under anything. And so I'm going to show you a technique where we can create a bevel to the inside edge of this to help hold a pour-in pad in better. Alright, so to start this process, first we have to take a shoe that will fit this foot. Now it doesn't have to fit perfectly, but we basically just want to grab a shoe that approximately fits the foot, and this inside edge is what we're interested in. So we're going to take this shoe and we're going to lay it down on 2 foam boards stuck together. So these foam boards, we peel one side and stick the other one together, so we've got one mylar side, one peelable side, and one blue side. Then we're going to put that shoe down on the 2 foam boards stuck together. We're going to trace the inside of that, and what we'll end up with is this. Okay, still can peel and stick it, but we've got this defined now. So the next thing that we have to do is we have to cut this out, and the way that you cut it is fairly critical because we want to create a bevel, which means that this has to be cut at an angle. So we're not just cutting it out straight, we're actually angling the knife and we're cutting that bevel into the form. What that will look like is this. So when we cut that out, you can see that there's a bevel to it. So this in effect is going to act as our form for the inner edge of the SuperFast shoe. So we're going to peel that off, and now we're going to center it on the foot. We're going to press it on there. And now when we make our SuperFast shoe, we will automatically have a bevel to that inner edge, which will help to lock in the pour-in pad. So let's take a look at how that shoe is made now. Alright, so we're ready to apply our first layer of SuperFast on our way towards making a custom shoe on this foot. So we've got our form laid down, and we're going to use our technique of circular motion and keeping the mixing tip 90 degrees from our surface. It really doesn't matter which direction you go with the circles, and they don't have to be perfect circles, but what we are trying to do is get a uniform layer here. So that's our first layer. So you can see already that we're starting to take on the shape of that form. Once that sets, 30 seconds, we'll actually let the horse probably stand on it, which will crush this a little bit, but that's okay. We're not worried about that. But then after about 4 or 5 minutes, we will apply a second layer, so we'll show you that. Okay, so we've got our first layer on. The heat has dissipated. It's been about 5 minutes, so we're ready to put the second layer on. We really don't have to do any prep to this. There's no drying, no cleaning, unless something has gotten on this surface. So if my hands are oily and I'm doing this, then probably be a good idea to wipe this with alcohol. But as far as the gloss, we don't have to worry about that at all. We can just go over with the second layer. So we're going to employ the same technique. And it doesn't really matter which direction the circles are, just as long as you're doing some sort of circular motion. And you can go back, if you've got low areas, you can go back and fill those in, dress it with a rasp later. So there is our second layer, and now you can see we're flush with the foam board, so we've got the benefit of that entire beveled inner edge, which is really going to help when it comes to pouring in a pad. Alright, so we've got our both layers are intact, and now it's time to remove this so that we can do a pour in. So I just happen to be using a clinch cutter. Works pretty well. You don't want to use a knife, but one of the best ways to remove this is to just score it down the middle, something that's not too sharp. And then we can use the Pritchel side to actually peel this out. And it doesn't really matter if you make a neat job of it, but all right. Now we can clean up this inner edge, get that flash off of there, but what this allows us to do is have a finished beveled surface. Now we'll go in and we'll clean this up, get rid of this with a wire brush, maybe neaten up this edge with a knife, but that really will give us an undercut that the material will lock into. The other advantage of this is that you can actually use this to increase the surface area against the ground. So if you want a wider shoe against the ground without having it lay on the sole, this is another benefit of this. So we've got a narrower base and a wider bead at the ground. Alright, so we've dressed the shoe, and now we're ready to do the pour-in. So we've got a foam board attached, and depending on the finish that we want, if this were a laminitic fill, then we would leave it pretty much dead flat. But we want a cupped fill, and so what we're going to do is we're going to press on that inner edge to form the foam board to the inner edge of that SuperFast shoe that we just made. This will give us a slightly lower, or an above ground finish, I should say. So that'll give us a little bit of a cupped finish. Alright, so we're ready to inject the pour-in pad. We're just going to put the mixing tip at the heels. Now we don't have to insert this mix tip all the way to the toe the way we used to recommend, because the flow of this is so much better through this system that we don't really have to worry about trapping air bubbles. We can just fill this, and we're going to fill it about 2/3 full, and then we're going to press on the center of the foam board to push it up the rest of the way and to push out any air bubbles. Alright, so we filled it, and now when we press, we push out the material. That also, you'll notice it pushes air bubbles out. We're going to hold that for 60 seconds. Alright, so we've left this foam board in place for about 10 minutes, so that's a good time to work on another foot. You can also trim this and let it wear off, but we're going to remove this, and it's very important, the way that you remove this is very important. Since the material is thinnest at the toe, we don't want to pull this off at the toe because we're likely to pull material out with it. So we're going to pull it off at the heel area, and so the way that we check is we peel this off a little bit And if we can get it to separate from the material, then it's okay to remove it. If it's pulling on the material, then it's best to wait a few more minutes until the material's built up some strength. So the way we want to do this is we basically roll it off. Again, we don't want to just tear it like a Band-Aid. We want to sort of gently roll it off. All right, and as we mentioned earlier, so now we've got a cupped finish. So we're above ground, so the shoe will take the impact, and as the horse loads towards breakover, this material will extend down and provide support.